Give me right side, isn't it?
Yep, that's fine.
Presentation on the issue, and I'll be able to answer some questions as well.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Channel 4 dispatches are coming here about, it'll answer station about 12:15, so they'll be here about 12:30. They've changed their mind about 4 or 5 times what they want to do all week. They now tell me if you want to film a little bit of the presentation, if you want to speak to tenants who are exempt, and then they're going on to Norris Green to actually film the area and how many properties are empty. It actually brings down the whole bedroom tax policy. There's a bigger issue coming from there. Has anybody got a copy of one of these? No?
I'll pass them out.
Right, yeah, you pass them out. Oh, you got some there, haven't you?
So have you got the other one there?
I've got copies of the other one, yeah. There's some of them there, pass them out.
Right, one of those, one of those. There's not many of the 2-pager.
Call this little loophole, but in fact it's a cock-up. We've made a total cock-up of this. And what it comes down to, if you meet 2 conditions, if you've been on housing benefit ever since the 1st of January 96, or before that, and you've lived in the same property in that time, you're exempt. End of story, okay? You'll be getting a letter through. There's people here who've got letters through already from over the water. Liverpool are well behind, Kirby, Knowsley are behind as well, and Sefton are just as much behind. But there's people on the Middle of what actually got letters to say, and here's how much we owe you, and we'll have this check to you in X number of days. Okay? So they're the 2 basic issues. That's the simplest way. If you've been on housing benefit since 96, and in the same property, you're exempt. But there's some other ones on top of that. In the same property, or it's what the regulations say, the rules say, is that if you've been in 2 properties, you've been forced to move because of fire or flood or earthquake or some other act of God, force majeure is a different term, well, then you're exempt as well. Yeah, but if you've been forced, so the council, your local council, whether it's Liverpool, Knowsley, Wirral, whoever, they'll say, yeah, you're exempt. And they can make that decision and then change the bedroom tax decision and pay you back. But because of fire and flood, you've been forced to move, something that's beyond your control. So, if you've been forced to move for another reason, your local council won't be able to say, yeah, we'll reverse the bedroom tax decision. But you can put in an appeal, and the tribunal will more than likely say, yes, you can. And a couple of examples. If you've had to move for domestic violence and abuse, right? No judge is going to turn around and say, well, that's what the regulation should have been. You've been forced to move, something beyond your control, and therefore, because the regulations, the rules weren't meant to penalise, surely they weren't meant to penalise women who had to flee domestic violence, for example. So the judge will actually widen what this rule is. Similarly, if you've been forced to move due to housing market renewal or demolition or any other decant, which basically means if your property had to be pulled down or whatever the case may be, or your property was getting sold and you had to move, well then, I think the judge will also say, yeah, you would also qualify. There's another issue which I'll start to put up now, because there's an actual case over the water that we've already taken, where, let's say 1996 is the date. Her dad died in 1990. This lady lived in a property for 40 years. She's still there now. Dad died in 1990. Mum never worked. So she was on housing benefit from 1990 till 1998, when Mum died. The daughter then takes over the property. Now, even though that's after 96, because she inherited the property, she inherits the rights that her mum had, which is a pre-96. So she will be exempt. Somebody, if you inherit, God forbid, if you're living with your parents now, and they've been there since 1996 before housing benefit, and they die tomorrow, and you take over the tenancy, you will be exempt as well. So there's plenty of cases of people who can be exempt. I've heard all sorts of rumours that these no-fee solicitors are coming out of the woodwork. Okay? Because there's going to be, if you go into the numbers, there's going to be a hell of a lot of people affected by this. And they're coming out of the woodwork to say, putting claims defence. That's what will happen. That's one issue. The other issue is you can do yourself is the maladministration which have given out to you. But let's just have a look at the numbers for a second, first of all. Ian Duncan Smith says it's between 3,000 to 5,000. It's only a small number, right? That is a load of... That's low. I'll give you an example. There's numbers starting to come in already. According to the DWP's estimate, we're all over the water. There should about 29 people. What's that guy? I said, my figure, it will be 289. We've got 482 at the moment, and that's from one landlord on the bill. Okay? West Lancs, Skep. According to the government's, the DWP's estimate, should have 9. According to my estimate, should have 89. They've got 150 so far, and again, that's rising. Waltham Forest should have 6. Under my figures, should have 65. They announced this week they've got already 145, and expect that to rise. Wigan should have 28. DWP, I say 282. Wigan and Lee Housing, who's the former stock transferred, so there's going to be more than them. They've got 328 identified so far, and they've also sent over a further 700 possibles to the council to look at them. And that's one landlord. There's other landlords there. St Helens should have 27 according to the DWP, 274 according to my estimate, there's 40,000. Again, one landlord, Helena, have already got 422. And you've got lots of other landlords there as well who've got people there. So this is, my figure of 40,000 is looking low. So the DWP one is a joke. So there's numbers everywhere. Kai, did you want to say?
Yeah, after the stock because we have a secure tenancy, and you kept different rights. You kept different rights.
Makes no difference whatsoever.
Makes no difference.
It makes no difference. That's a housing law issue.
Yeah.
This rights that you keep.
But I'm saying, if you didn't sign it, does that not strengthen your case? Like, I don't know if Karen didn't sign it.
No, it doesn't matter. It's a separate issue. That's a housing law issue. Okay. Whereas this is a housing benefit issue, or a welfare benefit issue. I fully take on board the point you're making, but it's a separate issue and it doesn't affect this. Ombudsman's page. I'll read it out. The law says the Ombudsman must look for maladministration. The definition is very wide and can include, and it's got 11 bullet points in there. All right? Delay, incorrect action, failure to follow procedures, etc. Then goes on at the bottom, the Ombudsman does not usually criticise the merits of a decision, it just looks at the way it's being done. Now, what's happened in the bedroom tax with the pre-96 issue is the government had said the only people who are exempt. It also says the government haven't. It's failure to investigate. So we can get them on that. Inadequate consultation. The law that brought in the bedroom tax says we have consulted widely with everybody that's concerned and whatever, but we clearly haven't. Because they've made this huge cock-up. It's not a loophole, it's a cock-up. Which is basically... So the government have totally misdirected Knowsley Council, Liverpool Council, Sefton Council, Wirral Council, every council in the country. Now that is maladministration, because on there, that is failure to follow the procedures or the law. They then said, we will be seeking to amend that legislation. Right? Now, it's a law they have to amend. Now, what that means is, it can't just be Ian Duncan Smith saying, change it and give an instruction, which would be like he's done or tried to in the past. It's got to be done through something called secondary legislation and statutory instrument, which will take at least 2 months. Now, but with all this attention on it, and if you imagine if all the opposition MPs are saying, I've taken this complaint, it's going to look like it's cover-up. They do that. So my personal opinion is they won't change it. The other thing they said in the House of Lords the other day, it was Lord Freud, he said, we will amend this in March. About 4 times. And at the bottom he went, ... if we can find parliamentary time. Okay, so that answers your question there. It's going to be debated in some form, either in Parliament or probably through the Social Security Advisory Committee. But if they then do try to change it, even after all of that, so it's going to be at least 2 months. The negative publicity, this is going to stay in, because of these numbers, this is going to stay in the headlines, this story. So because of these numbers, if the government do try to change it, it's going to be massive. It'll just refocus everyone's minds on what a cock-up they made in the first place and how it looks. So my personal opinion is that they probably won't. I think they will try and die a death with it and try and, I don't know, probably blame Eastern Europeans on something in it, whatever else, for the price of fish or something. And then when they're asked about it, they will say, oh, like we said in March, like we said in January, we said we will seek to amend this in March. If there was parliamentary time, we haven't been able to get parliamentary time. But that's my personal opinion on that. So what it is, so you've got maladministration against your local council, which will be Liverpool, Sefton, or whoever. So you can write a letter, and we'll get template letters out for you pretty shortly on this. So Karen's affected. Karen writes a letter to the DWP. I believe I have been caused injustice, which you have because you've had the bedroom tax deducted, because of your maladministration, which is another word for codswallop or whatever I said it was before. It's something they've done wrong. Now, you give the DWP about 2 weeks to come back to you. If they come back to you, or if they don't, you've already put a copy of this letter to your local MP. Your local MP then takes up a maladministration complaint against the DWP for the bedroom tax. So imagine if all the Labour MPs, which are all around here, so it could be Frank Field in Wirral, it could be Steve Roberts, Stephen Twigg, etc., in Liverpool. So it could be Joe Benton in Sefton, it could be all the, George Howarth or whoever. They stand up in the House of Commons and say, I'd just like to inform the House of Commons, the House today, that on behalf of...
Nice of yours.
Hang on. So let's say it's Frank Field, okay, which is Wirral. I'd like to inform the House today that on behalf of at least 482 of my constituents, I am launching a complaint of maladministration against the DWP and the bedroom tax. The political effect of that is dynamite. It doesn't matter if the parliamentary ombudsman, which is where it goes to, whether they find in your favour or not. If all these Labour MPs are going, oh, so who's the Labour MP for St Helens? Anybody know? No?
Sean Woodward, South.
Sean Woodward, yeah.
It could be, yeah. So Sean Woodward. Not the best example in the world. Sean Woodward stands up and say, oh, yes, I'd like to inform the House. I've got a further 422. If the West Lancs, I don't know, or whoever the MP is well, there's plenty in Wigan, Labour MP for Wigan. I'd like to inform the House, and we've got at least 328 people in the same boat who are having a complaint of maladministration against this government's inept handling of the bedroom tax that has seen very vulnerable people have their money deducted wrongly because of the DWP's error. Yeah, Karen begins in September. She isn't going to be HP from April to September.
I'm getting buses.
Yes, I know you are. All right. Which means that when she gets all of the money backdated, the bedroom tax to be deducted, Karen's going to make some money on this. And in fact, because Liverpool are so relatively confident on this, the longer they take to make the decision and to change it, the more money Karen's going to make. So when they eventually do it, and as Karen said, there's a big party, and it's all on Karen, because she's going to have a load of so you can see exactly what a total cock-up this is. But
£880, and how long they take? Is what
I'd
Karen
have no
said.
catch machine because we didn't go.
Yeah.
I will just do for each one today.
Ed, you got a question?
Is there a mechanism that the councils can ask the housing associations for that money before the refunds are made?
now, what the housing benefit manager in Wirral last week, and what he said was to me, when we find people who are exempt, and we work out how much we owe them, we will email or contact the landlord to say, is the account in arrears? If it is, they will pay the money back to the landlord. If it's not, they will pay the money back directly to the tenant. I suspect, though, because this already happens in over the water, and it will probably happen everywhere, the councils will duck out that decision. They'll just pay it to the landlord, and then the tenant has to claim the money back from the landlord.
Right.
Relates in Article 14
Okay, yeah.
and the Disability Discrimination Act and the Equalities Act.
Yeah.
They will all reinforce the pre-1996 regs only.
Yes, they will. I think so. We'll come to Robert's point first about if Wirral Council, or any council, pays the bedroom tax money back to the landlord. At the moment, with housing benefit, it's paid direct to the landlord. That's the current arrangement. So they will do that. So, in effect, you as the tenant and the claimant have given the council the authority to pay it direct to your landlord. That's the current situation. Now, so let's say they pay back £800, which is £20 a week for 40 weeks, which is roughly where we're at the moment, give numbers. But you've paid some of the bedroom tax, and so your account with your landlord goes for, say, £400 in credit. Your landlord then, you just say to your landlord, can you tell me when you're giving me the £400 of my money you're holding, and they have to give you that money. Okay? So you will definitely get that.
The alternative to that, if your account is in credit currently, and you know a payment is on its way, you tell the council to pay it to you.
Yeah.
You put it in writing, you say, my rent account is in credit, you can check that with my landlord, please make a cheque payable to me and send to my address.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Baseline, and then we applied on the carers basis,
Yeah.
and we got this, then
Yeah.
where do I stand?
You'll get the money back. You'll get the money back.
Have you been deducted, if you're exempt and you've had any amount of your housing benefit deducted, i.e. the bedroom tax, you'll get all of that back.
They have paid it, but they haven't informed me, or they have paid the bedroom. The only way I found out was through Juliet going to the one-stop shop.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to follow that up, aren't we? Because in terms of an overnight carer, the money doesn't go into your rent account. When it's a non-residential overnight carer, that bedroom is exempted from the calculation. So there's no actual money that goes anywhere. Right? It means that you're not under occupying the property. That's what that means. Kai, have you got a question? Speak to my housing association about being exempt. Do not speak to your housing association. These decisions are made by who?
So you, and they'll get your fee as well. Whereas what you can happen if you take a group action, it's a bigger action, they'll get more of the money, and they may even pay you a bit of a grant for actually taking insurance. You said they flooded in like vultures.
Well, it's all over Twitter, but we're on that. We're on that kind. We're speaking
No, it's
to
just for the
others.
benefit. It's for the benefit of other people here that they don't go off on a separate.
Yeah, I think if anybody is approached by any solicitors, you do not make any decisions. You come and speak to us. Let's do this carefully, right? Let's do it carefully. Let's find some support. We've got a meeting with Unite later this week. That's one possibility. There are also other solicitors that are friendly and are helping us, and there are barristers around as well.
Can I just say, expound on both of those points? Like I said, it's taking the action. There's more than one action, there's actions.
Yes.
Okay? What you've got, and it comes on to Nick's point as well. Firstly, you've got, if you're an affected tenant by this, you've got a maladministration case against your local council and against central government. So there's two separate actions. Then, legal actions. Okay? If we say they're quasi-legal actions, the maladministration against local government and central government, then you've got legal actions. Like I said, there's the no-win, no-fee solicitors are coming out of the woodwork.
I've dealt with quite a few just this last few days. What happens, people are now saying about putting in maladministration for the DWP.
Yeah.
If we all do it separately, then, it's separate cases. Would you suggest that we hang back, or send those letters in anyway, or think about class action for everyone to try and take it, that we can get hold of it.
Well, we can have a discussion
Let
about
me answer that
that.
question very quickly, and I'll pass it on to Juliet. Juliet's going to show just how you're going to show how easy it is to put in these cases to advise the people. I have never heard of a class action maladministration case. Ordinarily, it's the ombudsman, whichever one it is, whether that's the housing ombudsman, the local government's ombudsman, or the parliamentary ombudsman, usually deal on a one-to-one basis with the complainant and them. But in Liverpool alone, it could be 1,600 people, based on what the figures are showing. Seriously.
So probably you'll have to go to tribunal and cost us all another £2 to go each time. But that's a very easy form to fill in. Now, if you're someone, we had someone who wasn't responsible for paying the bills in the house, didn't know if they got housing benefit or not. Their husband had died. So what we said to that woman on Friday in the surgery is, put the form in. Put the exemption form in and wait for the written response from your council. And with anything to do with your council, do not speak to them on the telephone. Do not go in and have a nice little chat because you might know somebody in there. Wait till you get a written response from your council. That may say, as in Pat's case, at the back there, that great, the money's going to be £800 going to be in your bank on Monday. We agree with you. So I think all of those cases will have to go to tribunal. And that means that it's not going to be instant checking the post for the next couple of weeks. It isn't going to happen that quickly. Yeah, well, we can sort that. There's something to worry about. Something to worry about at all. So all those issues of forced move, I believe we will probably have to argue at tribunal just to see what happens. So these letters go in to your council with all the local council ones here. We have blank ones and we can do any ones for anywhere across the country. We've done it for Glasgow, we've done it for Somerset, all kinds. They go into your council. You just deposit them. Don't get any scripts. Also, from what we heard on Friday in our surgery, there was one woman who was passed around 4 one-stop shops in Liverpool. She went from Kirkdale to the centre of Liverpool to Page Moss and then back to Kirkdale. If you can't get about like that, then you send it in the post, record a delivery. Make a copy for yourself, and for the information only of your housing association, you give them a copy. So that's very clear. I think the oldest person we've got is 62, who is exempt. That most people are on either DLA or ESA benefits. That quite a proportion, about a quarter, are also carers. And then you've got a whole list of illnesses here: arthritis, epilepsy, bipolar, sleep apnea, disabled husband, son has leukemia, spinal injury, care for my dad, arthritis, head injury, diabetic, fibromyalgia, etc. So I think that what we have to remember is that probably the people who are affected by the pre-96 issue are probably people that are not part of the bedroom tax movement, I would say. So we've had lots of phone calls from people who don't know about a bedroom tax movement at all, or a local meeting. Also, do not have information about discretionary housing payments, non-residential overnight carer, or the appeals process. Most people know nothing of that either. So I think it's really important that we continue to spread the word, and we do things like, we need a letter writing campaign to local papers. People need to be informed. Since I went on Radio Merseyside, which was 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I haven't been able to get back on. I've been trying to get back on to update listeners about what we're finding out. As well as those phone calls we've got and all the data we're gathering, on each one of those, we have sent letters out in the post. So we've had quite a lot of general support with things like stamps, pricing in 50p, second class envelope, 120, a lot of money. But they've gone out. The other thing we did, we issued a blog in between Christmas and the New Year about the maladministration issue. And we asked tenants from across the country to email us with their postcode and their initials, and to agree with the statement that they're exempt because of those 2 reasons. We've received about 150 emails to that email account also. And what we have done from that, we had some fun the other day, Jill, Mick and I in my front room, identified each MP that belongs to that postcode. Jill and Mick, what MPs did we get? Can you remember?
Seema Malhotra, Kenneth Clark,
IDS,
Duncan Smith,
Miliband.
Steve Rotherham in Liverpool.
Yep. So what will happen now? What we haven't done, the email contacts, or if you like, the ones that get the blog. That's a Facebook thing. What we haven't done yet is link to the mostly local telephone calls with MPs. So there'll be a lot. I mean, we got a couple of MPs nationally who had 2 or 3, maybe people affected in their constituency, but locally there will be many more. So from that, we will be issuing letters emails to those MPs, telling them that you have a number of people in your constituency who are affected by this, and we need you to raise a maladministration complaint through the parliamentary ombudsman.
Have they got time?
I understand there's variables and there's other considerations. Will that be on any of the papers that you've
Yeah, I mean, the housing systems document that I found last night was quite good about that.
Yeah,
I mean, very strictly, you're only allowed one single break in those 18 years, and that is a break in your housing benefit of up to 4 weeks, right? So you can't have 3 breaks of 1 week each. You can only have 1 break of up to 4 weeks, and that's very clearly reiterated in there. Also, there's an issue about government training thing, but we think that'll be very, very rare. The other issue that's already come up, and it's been on Facebook, is where a housing benefit department, the council might have said, well, no, you've had a break in your benefit, and people are not aware of it. Our advice would be then, you go to your housing association and get a rent statement, and find out actually what housing benefit has been paid. Now, the thing that occurred to me, and it's probably occurring to me, since this government came in, the issue of sanctions has been a huge one. And it makes me wonder actually that the increase in sanctions may have something to do with this issue. They say they missed it, it's a loophole, it's a cock-off. But when sanctions came in, particularly for JSA, if your job seeker's allowance benefit falls, it also means more than likely your housing benefit also is not paid. I mean, we have been advising people to go to one-stop shops and make a nil income declaration. But often people didn't know that, and that would have gone on quite frequently over the years. So we may need to look at what we can do about that, Mick. Do you want to say something?
Let's not, you hit on people moving, and you will move to, like, within a certain area of their community, but let's not clash, let's count and look at the wider issue, that this is a social cleansing issue as well,
Yes.
where people are having to move from wider areas of the country out of the south. It's not just a northern issue, this is a national issue where people are being decanted from southern areas to move down north, miles out of the communities and breaking communities up, and all the widespread issues that brings of moving people from high areas of employment to low areas of employment, and just adding to the issue that is a wider issue.
Quite possibly, but I don't believe that's the bedroom tax. I believe that issue is a benefit cap.
Yeah.
The benefit cap is about high
It all
rents in the town. I agree. There's been social cleansing going on in this country for years. Housing market renewal began in 2001. That moved thousands and thousands of people out of social housing.
Yeah.
Thousands into mixed communities that are supposed to be vibrant and supposed to work. But we know that was a load of baloney. Ed?
How about the issue of how long would these government departments have to hold on to records? Now, myself as a business, I have to hold on to records for 6 years.
Yes, yes.
Is that the same for the likes of the council for housing benefits? Because there's an awful lot of places now claiming they don't have the records that go back to 1996.
But as we said before, the onus is not on you as the tenant. That's why you take these letters in and you wait for a written response. You don't engage in discussion with them. They have to respond to you. You are asking them to review a housing benefit decision. So if they come back to you and say, oh Ed, you had a break in your housing benefit from this date to this date, that's in writing, you can go and investigate it. If they write back to you and say, oh Ed, we're sorry, we haven't got your records, Oh, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Right, because the onus is on them. And as we've seen, again, going back to Karen, in Liverpool, we heard perhaps Liverpool didn't have the records. But Karen is in a benefits tribunal where they produced a housing benefit application form from 1991.
They did the same with us, 2003, I thought.
Yeah. No, but the point is, the 1996 rule means that they have got records going back to 91. Is there any other questions about any of these issues that people are unsure about? They had a legacy system. Yeah.
They said go back to 98. Does that mean then that everyone can just go in and just write letters?
I think if you're not sure, we've had a few people in the surgery, particularly had one in on Friday, who previously she wasn't responsible for the bills and all that. Her husband died, and she's not sure about when he worked, when he didn't work, if they got housing benefit. So in that circumstance, the advice is what? You put the letter in. You wait for the written response. Do not engage in telephone conversations or any other conversations with your council. You are asking them to review your housing benefit decision. They have to write back to you, and then the whole notion of an appeal starts again. You then have a month to appeal the decision. We just love these appeals, don't we? And at the same time, we've got, of course, the new housing benefit decisions about to come out around the beginning of March. Okay, any other questions at all?
Just to say, really, and I don't know the name, big blocks of flats there. And the block he said he's in, there's 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom flats. And the 2 bedroom flats are all empty. He said people have just disappeared. He said, well, where have they gone? He said, I've no idea. And there's all notices on all the doors to say, if you don't come in a certain time, we
To get your
dispose
possessions.
of your possessions. And I said, well, where have they gone? He said, I don't know.
Right, that's an interesting question for us all then. Where have people noticed empty properties? We know that Norris Green has got them. Kirby, Hoogle, Stockbridge Village. So we know that the bedroom tax is causing people to abandon properties and to leave social housing. And you moved to social housing, didn't you? Did anyone know of anyone who went to private landlords?
Emma Lockett's mother.
Emma Lockett, who was evicted, her mother was all over the news, went from social housing to private, which meant what? The housing benefit bill went up because private housing costs more. Maureen.
On 12th of February, Ian Lavery will put a question to the House to repeal the bedroom tax. What will be the effect upon all these appeals then?
Well, that is a 10-minute rule bin, which means what, Joe?
It's a 10-minute rule bill, which means it's, and my up here, so we've got to be careful. It means that it looks good for Ian Lavery, but will have no real consequence.
Definitely.
No real consequence to Joe. Nick?
We've seen this before. We've got no records of how many people have moved from social housing into private housing. Journalists have been in touch with us before, asking us to identify tenants who may have downsized into private housing or moved into private housing. We have no records. How are we going to get them records?
Nobody does. If you're a social landlord and your tenant's moved or downsized, you don't keep a record of where he or she's gone. Nobody's got those records.
Or the impact.
They do.
The benefits office.
The benefits office may have
They
them.
have.
They will.
Benefit will be able to identify
Yes.
those people.
That
But
could
they
be...
don't hold they will hold the data, but they don't hold records in
No,
that
they
regard.
won't have the records, but they could identify them.
I mean, yeah, one of the things we talked about doing yesterday is there's no reason why councils, housing benefit departments are public bodies.
Yeah.
Two things we can ask them in a specific time period. How many tenants have you identified that are now exempt? We can ask every local authority in the country. We can also ask them in the period whatever, April last year, how many people moved to private landlords? Because they'll be paying the housing benefit bill
housing.
Yeah.
from social housing. Why don't we ask that? No.
See Liverpool.
Data protection, Karen.
They wouldn't give you
No. But we can work with housing associations who might say, in a particular road, there's a load of people, perhaps you should go and see. They can't give us names and addresses. Mark, you've got a question.
Sorry, sorry to come in late. I might have missed earlier on. I was turned down for an overnight carer because I wasn't on the middle rate GLA for hire. So what happens there? I know I have to apply, or I don't get attendance allowance, right? Only for the simple fact of I haven't applied for it, but I should get it. The attendance allowance I could get because someone comes in to look after me at least once or twice a week. So
We'll have to follow that up. Did you put in a doctor's letter with your form?
no, I didn't. It was just literally just when I went in I filled in my form from the BHP and for my attendance allowance, and I had a result back saying that because I wasn't on middle rate care or hire for the DLA, that I wasn't entitled to have and I wasn't claiming attendance allowance, then I couldn't claim for my spare room.
There are two conditions. It's been on the correct rate of DLA or attendance allowance, right? And the other condition is or a letter from a health professional. So what we'll need to do, anybody who requires an overnight carer is not on the right rate of benefit, you put a letter in from your doctor or a health professional, whatever your issues are. Okay, we need to move on, guys.
Can I just make one comment?
Yeah.
Okay, that word put London because it's we can't use that. You want some shots at me talking through, so I'll briefly go over the presentation again, and then for visual effect, they want me to ask for a show of hands of people who are exempted, so they can get that visual. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
The other thing is, as those of you that were there on Friday, or last Friday before when Sky came, we had about a 15-20 slot on Sky News, but they were filming for 2 or 3 hours, so if I make a few mistakes and have to go back over it, I apologise. Oh, and I have to introduce myself on the way out. You ready, Mark? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Joe Halewood. I'm a housing consultant, in case you didn't know me. And today I'd like to talk about the pre-1996 exempt issue. It's quite simple, really. There are a huge number of people who are being affected by the bedroom tax and have the bedroom tax imposed wrongly. The people who are exempt are those who meet these two conditions. Firstly, they've been on continuous housing benefits since 1996, and secondly, they've been in the same property at that time. But there's also a few other people who will also be exempt. For example, if you've had to move out of your property, the regulations say if you've moved because of fire or flood and your property has become uninhabitable, then you are exempt. In that situation, your local council will revise the decision and they will pay you your bedroom tax back. However, if you've moved for other reasons and been forced to move, say for example, you've had to move because of domestic violence, that is a forced move. Now, while your local council may not be able to change the decision and exempt you, if you appeal, the tribunal will more than likely exempt you on that basis because you've been forced to move. And the regulations surely were not meant to penalise those fleeing domestic violence. Another example, which is very, very important locally, if you've been forced to move because your property was being demolished, or for housing market renewal purposes, or you've been forced to move from your property for any other reasons, slump clearances, compulsory purchase order, well then you've been forced to move. And while your local council will not be able to revise the decision, if you appeal a tribunal, the judges are likely to say that was beyond your control and it's a forced move. So that you've got a chance to become exempt there. Now, there's been a lot of focus on the numbers of people who are exempt because of this blunder, shall I say, by the DWP. Ian Duncan Smith has said it's between 3,000 and 5,000, when in the national press I have said it's 40,000, or 10 times that number. And perhaps better, I can use our local examples here. The DWP figures would suggest in Wirral there would be 29 people who would be had the bedroom tax wrongly imposed. The 40,000 figure would suggest 289 people, or 289 households, I should say. Yet so far, one landlord, just one landlord of many in Wirral, has identified 482 cases. And there's more to come, and there's more than one landlord. West Lancashire, the DWP figures would suggest 9. The 40,000 figures suggest 89, yet so far there's 150, and it's rising. The figures are coming in preliminary. Wigan should have 29 according to the 28, sorry, according to the DWP figures. The 40,000 figures would suggest 282. Yet one landlord, and it's one landlord only in Wigan, has identified and confirmed and validated 328 cases and sent over 700 more potential cases to the local council. Even in London, which has got half the number of people affected by the bedroom tax as the North West, Waltham Forest should have 6 households affected. Under my figures, 65. They've so far identified 145, and that's rising. So this is going very, very high in terms of numbers. The 40,000 estimate is looking at a low one. The DWP estimate of 4,000 is risible. Right, what I'd like to do, from organisations across the country, including Reclaim, have asked for cases and found cases of people who are exempt. Can I just have a quick show of hands in this room if you're exempt from this? I haven't made one blunder yet. Good. Has anybody got any questions about this pre-1996 issue?
Maureen's got a question.
Sorry, it's just about those figures. Remember, there's children in there, so them figures are treble what you're saying, what they're saying, and what we'll end up as.
I agree with you. These are the number of households.
Yeah.
So my estimate of 40,000 is 40,000 households. On average, there's 2.4 persons in a household.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the claimant that's affected, it's every man, woman and child in that household is affected by this. So 40,000 household equates to 100,000 men, women and children.
Correct. Any other questions? We were talking before about the type of tenants who are affected by this. And I will tell you about the research that Reclaim's been doing. And what we've discovered from the figures we've already gathered is that, as you would guess, those people claiming housing benefit continuously and have lived in the same property are going to be what? Are going to be older, are going to be in their 50s, are going to be ill or disabled. And what we've found from the 100 or so people that have contacted us in the last week is that at least a third of those are also carers. And through our research, we've also asked people what kind of disability or illness that they are suffering. They've got a list here of all kinds of conditions. Epilepsy, arthritis, bipolar, depression, cerebral palsy, head injury, heart complaints, sleep difficulties, Asperger's, mobility, asthma. So they are all the issues that have come up already across the country. Most people, we've also asked, part of the research, how many bedrooms are there in your home? I'm just looking at this list here. Most people have 3 bedrooms in their home. We then asked them, how many bedrooms are spare? I'm just looking at the numbers on here. I would say 80% of people have said that 2 bedrooms are spare. So these are people who have had a family in these homes. This is a family home. Are now in their 50s, and now have at least one member of the household who is ill or disabled. And a third of those 120 people are also carers. So this is a family home. We were talking to Maria yesterday, who came to the reclaimed surgery. She has downsized, been forced to downsize from a family home to a flat. I asked Maria, how many grandchildren do you have? She has 4 children. They have 11 grandchildren. They're now living in a high-rise flat. Maria's family suffers from various illnesses, including illnesses which means she cannot use the lift in that flat. So often Maria can't go out anywhere at all, let alone have people visiting her. You know, as we all know, I don't have any grandchildren as yet, but if you have a family home, it's not just a home for the people that happen to live in it at that moment. It is a family home for the extended family, and that includes grandchildren, people who may visit. I mean, even recently in my situation, my mum came to stay with me for 4 months. And luckily I had a bedroom, a spare bedroom, the government calls it, that she could sleep in, because there was issues going on in the family. And she also gets a deduction of housing benefit of £25. So out of her income of £112, she pays £50 towards her housing benefit. And this woman is also someone who has always worked. She worked 16 hours, self-employed for a care agency. She also has a daughter who has mental health issues, who we've been trying to sort out. This is a daughter who won't engage with her or the family or anybody else. So you can see that from through the bedroom tax. We're just like Karen, we'll hear a bit more about Karen. Karen has always worked. Karen is exempt from the bedroom tax. So this is people who are on low incomes, as you said, Ed, people who perhaps work part-time for lots of different reasons, perhaps can't get a full-time job. And also people who have other issues. With the cost of care in this country, if you're caring for someone, you get a meagre carer's allowance, but that means that isn't a cost to anybody else then.
And then you've got to fight to get them.
Yeah, then you've got to fight. I had a question the other day actually on Facebook. Can you get a carer's allowance for 2 people? There's a family where there are 2 people requiring care. You cannot. You cannot. You only get carer's allowance for 1. Mick, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say, you know, the Welfare Reform Act, not only have we seen the bedroom tax, we've seen the imposition of council tax on most people who not paid, waged or unwaged. 0 hours contracts and low wages are affecting everyone. And then we've got the abomination, which is the work capability assessment. And the Disability Minister, Mike Penning, was the man who described it as an abomination. The government know this, and it seems like an attack on the poorest people in society. Let's not forget that most of the carers in this country are unpaid. We do it out of love and concern for people that are in their families, or maybe family friends. Most of these carers do not want a penny, do not ask for a penny, and do not get a penny. Let's not forget that. Are we pushing too fast? We've been warned. We've been warned about these reforms. We've had the UN rapporteur over into this country looking at the impact. There's no assessments being made of what all this austerity, the austerity measures are going to impact on society. We're seeing the effects now. They're wide and they're far-reaching.
And that's like saying, you know, applied. Then when you come to say, I need that spare room to go away because you haven't got souls that you want to get, the fact that they're doing it for nothing. Do you know what I mean? So what?
So can I just come back on a few issues that you raised? One, all related to the same man. There's 1.08 million people in work claiming housing benefit. So look at say, well, if I'm going to be pillories for, or castigated as a scrounger for being on benefits, even though 1.08 million people who are in work claiming housing benefit effectively shows the housing benefit is a subsidy for low pay.